Hey everybody, welcome to Creative Frequencies. I am your host, Chris Vaglio, and this is the show where we have conversations with creative professionals from all walks of life. So if that kind of stuff is your jam, and then listen to my next guest. Let's rock. Is being a full-time podcaster a real pain in the ass? I mean, is it like a lot of work, man? I mean, is it something that you enjoy doing? Are you tired of doing it? I want to hear from you. I want to know your thoughts on being a podcaster.
It can be a pain in the ass from time to time. You know what I mean? I mean, it's one of those things where it starts off as a hobby, at least for many of us, right? Starts off as a hobby. And then as you know, as monies and invoices and dollars start getting thrown around, start to become a little bit more intense, I guess, a little bit more stressful, I guess, right? But that's like anything else, right? But I love doing it, been doing it for 8 years now. And yeah, I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. It's one of those things where it's funny because apparently in school I was like the quiet guy, even though I wasn't really quiet.
Right.
But now they see me on social media. It's like, man, you were totally different from where you were in school. Like, no, I was kind of the same. You just didn't really know me like that. But it is what it is, though.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. I'm always one of those people that I think when people go, so what are you up to now? And I go, well, I'm doing coaching, consulting. I'll be like, oh, you still do the video thing? I'm like, no, I sold that business. I don't really do production anymore. But I also do a couple podcasts. They're like, podcasts? Like, about what? And I'm like, I don't know. I do one where I talk to creators, and I do another one where I, hang out with my friend and we talk about music. I mean, it's kind of it. They're like, man, you're doing a podcast? I had no idea. And it's always so funny when people are like, you tell me to do a podcast, and it's always like, you do a podcast? Like, I don't know. Sometimes I get that reaction, and it's like, yeah, I mean, I used to do radio back in the day. So I feel like doing podcasting itself was something that I don't know, it seemed like easy to get into. And I actually
For
didn't even
sure.
get into podcasting until like I think it was like 2013 or something, when my
Hmm.
my friend Victor approached me about doing a show together, Galaxy of Geeks. But like, yeah, it's one of those things where once again, how you just said, kind of start as a hobby. Like, oh, I'm just gonna do it. I'm gonna do it. And then before you know it, you're doing shows, like not just a show, but shows. And then
Right.
then if you really started doing some accounting of your time, you're like putting a lot of time and effort into this. And it's not like I'm really I wouldn't say I'm making money. It's not really making money. It's like some money kind of trickles in and you go, well, this pays a StreamYard bill for a month. Like it's
Right.
kind of like that. I mean, as far as expectations go, I mean, is that, we're going to get into, cause I really want to dive deep into like your podcast, cause it's awesome. Black is
Sure.
America. I think it's a great show, but I think I just want to kind of catch from you too, like, going into it, like start as a hobby for you. I mean, where you started and where you are now, and it's always two different things, but like, did you feel like the progression was going to happen to where you are now? Did you feel like this could turn into something that you could actually monetize? Or is it literally, like, where are your thoughts on it? Are you shocked of where it is now? I mean, where are you at with this?
It's a bit of a mixed bag, if I can be honest with you, Chris,
Yeah.
because it's one of those things where it's like, if you do a thing and you keep doing a thing for a while, clearly things are going to happen,
Right.
right? Like, some type of success, some type of notoriety or whatever. But the things that have happened have always surprised me. Does that make sense? Like, it's different in
Yeah.
that regard. Like,
Oh, I get it.
something's going to happen, but you don't know what, and you're always
Yeah.
surprised by that. So it's like, so it's like had the fortune of like winning an award here and there, and that affords
Yeah.
me a trip to like go to New York and like rub shoulders with like Anderson Cooper or somebody like that, and that's kind of cool. And then people like, hey, you do this for free. How about we just give you a check for it and you do it for us? Like, oh, that's a thing. Okay,
Yeah.
sure, why not? So
Sure.
it's always fun. But nah, man, it's always one of those things where it's like something else cool will happen. I'll be like, yeah, I didn't have that on my bingo card. Definitely didn't have that on my bingo card. Like when I was asked to cover an event in Orlando at Walt Disney World, which afforded the entire family a free trip to Walt Disney World. I was like, okay,
Oh, wow.
that wasn't on the bingo card,
Yeah.
right? Or to, hey, here's an award ceremony. It's in Los Angeles and it's right across the street from the Staples Center. Hey, yep, that wasn't on the bingo card either. So it's like, you do a thing, and after a while, that thing is going to yield things, but you're always surprised by the things those things yield. If that makes any sense.
100% sense. And that I agree with that because I've always said, even when I started doing my coaching thing, I was like, I don't know where this is gonna go. Like,
Right.
honestly, I don't know if I'm gonna keep doing this full time, or I all I know is that I have to do something, because doing something is the thing that is the trigger event that then can lead to other opportunities that you could never imagine, because you just don't. I mean, it's just gonna happen because but you have to put something into motion for something to happen. Like, I
100%.
think that's just the laws of the universe, man. Like, you have to do one thing for something else to give, and while you can't predict where it's going to go, and then the choice is up to you. Like, is that an opportunity I want to do, or is it something that, not really worth my time or effort or something? But in this case, like, some things that you would never predict, like the trip you're talking about. How would you ever predict that when you started doing podcasts?
Of course not, man. When I was in my closet getting like 3, 4 downloads every 5 months, and you're like, yeah, one day you're gonna go to Walt Disney World based on this thing you're doing. Like, stop lying. You're clearly doing something.
Yeah.
Like, nah, that doesn't make sense. But nah, man, it's just been this wonderful, wonderful ride, and you just amazed at every turn it kind of takes. So I'm just grateful for it.
Yeah, I love that, man. I mean, I think that I think if there's anything for anybody listening to this, I think the lesson to be learned here is, don't just sit around keep thinking about doing it. Like, just do the thing. Whatever it
Yeah.
is. It doesn't have to be, just do the thing. Because you
Right.
just don't know where that road's going to lead, but you gotta at least get on the road. You can't stay, pulled off to the side forever.
For
You gotta
sure.
just start do it. So
Absolutely.
I love that, man. So I want to dive to the podcast a bit.
Yeah.
Black is America. I've listened to I'd say maybe the last 3 episodes are the ones that I've caught up with the most. And
Yeah.
I've got my opinion of the show, which I think is really cool. But and I hope everybody here who's listening goes and checks it out. So definitely use the links in the notes and all that, because I really think that after they hear they're going to be really interested in hearing this show. But so I'm going to ask you like the standard question, but like, seriously though, what inspired you to do this? Um, because to me, I hear it, and the stories you tell on the show sound so personal, right? And I think that for me, that's the thing I latch on the most, because the
Yes.
way you're telling the stories makes it almost sound like you were there. Like, that's my perspective. Seriously, like, but that's how captivated I am by the stories that you tell and the way you tell it. So talk to me about it. Why did you decide to start it, and the style too, that you even decide this narrative style that you present on the show?
Sure. So one of the things I wanted to do was to kind of switch my podcasting format style up, if you will. And so, as you know, many podcasts are like what we're doing today. It's kind of
Yeah.
like that interview back and forth style of show. But I knew when the pandemic kind of happened and a lot of people were going to get into podcasting, that I wanted to kind of stand out, because I knew the market would flood with more and more podcasts. I was like, what am I going to do to
Yeah.
really stick out and do this thing? And so, nonfiction narrative. And so, if you're familiar with like This American Life and New York
Hmm.
Times The Daily and stuff like that, those styles of show are the ones that get like the critical acclaim, and they have
Yeah.
like 20, 25 people working on an episode, and they got
Yes.
a whole
All these
research.
giant teams.
Exactly, right? Like in a whole research department, and that could be kind of daunting when it's like just kind
Right.
of you and your wife doing this thing. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, sure, right? But I wanted to do the show also because we often hear about affirmation, and in the Black community, we often don't see a lot of people who look like me and my wife be portrayed in certain ways in media and stuff like that. And so we wanted to help tell the story that, like, listen, Black Americans, just like anybody else, have helped to write the story of this country, and here are the stories that kind of lead to that. And I appreciate you saying that they sound very personal, because in one aspect they are, right.
Right.
It's me giving something to 10-year-old Dominic, 8-year-old Dominic, that I didn't have before, right?
That's cool.
But also at the same time, I try to make it personal due from the research in that regard. So
Mhm.
I really try to be very granular and microscopic with the research. So because I could read a New York Times article and have a pretty over no a pretty broad view of
Right.
the story I want to tell. All right. But I want to get more deeper and granular. So I want to hear what were they like as a kid, right? Were they a straight A student? Were they a knucklehead, right?
Yeah.
Were they, a the youngest of 10 or the oldest of 5,
Right.
right? Because I think that helps formulate the story to who these people are. So that way, by the time you hear the end of a story, or in the episode, you're rooting for this person. You're either rooting for this person to be, to be the hero, or you're rooting for somebody else to get their comeuppance, right?
Yeah.
So you build that investment over time. But I wanted to tell these stories because, again, to provide that affirmation
Mhm.
for little Dominic and for little black kids and black girls and black boys who don't have that, growing up. Because I remember being in the 5th grade and being told, hey, you could be whatever you want to be, even president of the United States. And then you go look on the wall and it's like white guy, white guy, white guy,
Yeah.
white guy, white guy. And I don't mean that to be offensive, but that's just the truth of the matter.
Yeah,
Right. And so
absolutely.
it's like, so if I don't see myself in those things, right, it's kind of hard for me
Right.
to kind of see and envision that for myself. And so we try to do that with Black as American. I'll say this one last thing and land my plane. It was
Yeah.
another a Hollywood producer either wrote an article or gave an interview or something like that. Is like, every story that's been told that needed to be told has already been told. Like, no, that's not true. Because I've never heard the story of John Fox. I've never heard the story of Alvin Cash. I've never heard the story of Wendell Scott. I've never heard these stories.
Right.
Right. So it's one of those things where like, no, there's so many more stories to be told. And so I think it's kind of important, even from the people who come from my culture, it's important for me to tell these stories. So,
Yeah, I would say I think in the history of mankind, for as long as people have been walking the earth, I don't think every story's been never told.
right,
you know,
right.
and most of them honestly have just been forgotten with time because of just time.
It
It,
sounds like that. Like I remember somebody saying, like I think around the first World's Fair, like every invention that's been made has already been made. They're like, no, that's not true. We need more stuff, right? And then here comes the microwave. Here comes the
yeah.
all this other stuff. So it's just one of those deals.
Hey everybody, Chris here. Are you a creative professional that's struggling to turn your passion into a thriving business? I totally get it, right? You're an artist, designer, writer, maybe you're a podcaster. Regardless, you're an entrepreneur with a unique vision. But let's be real. Navigating the business world can be overwhelming. That's where I come in. I specialize in helping creative pros just like you build profitable and scalable businesses. Imagine having a partner who truly understands your unique challenges and provides personalized strategies for success. From pricing your services and finding new clients to mastering time management and negotiating like a pro, I've got your back. With one-to-one personalized coaching, custom workshops, and mastermind groups, I'm here to help you elevate your business to new heights. I have over 25 plus years of experience, and I bring the expertise and support you need to grow with confidence. Don't let the business side of things dim your creative spark. Join me now, and let's transform your passion into a powerful and profitable business. To book a free consultation with me, just visit rocketgrowthagency.com to learn more and get started. Let's rock. So what's the process for you when it comes to choosing the stories that you're going to tell? Like what do you look at and what determines the stories you're going to tell? And then I would imagine from there it goes into a process. So I'd love to hear about it, because once again, as someone who creates, and when I hear what you do, like I'm in it, I'm captivated, and then it of course goes the next layer, which is like, oh my gosh, how does he do it? How much time is he? How does he pick these stories? Like, it's like, yes, I want to know how the sausage is made a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, how I pick the stories, I'll hear a story because the thing is, usually, especially around February during Black History Month, there's all these stories that pop up of
Right.
like the person who did that, and this, that, and the other, right? And so I'm always looking for a unique angle. Like, so for Wendell Scott, it was like the first African American NASCAR. Like, no, I live in the South. It's usually a
Yeah.
sport dominated by Southern white men. And so it's like you don't necessarily see until now, like Bubba Wallace and stuff like that. You didn't really see that before. So Wendell Scott, oh, let's tell that story. That should be an interesting one, and kind of go from there. Or I'll hear the story of a John Fox, like this man called artillery fire on himself to kill 100 Germans, including himself. Yeah, I've never heard that story before. Let's tell
Yeah.
that story, right? And so from there, what I do is so that's how the interest is peaked, right?
Yeah.
Like it's something that's just extremely interesting, and I could do something really cool with it. And then from there, I seek out research and interviews, right? Like, so people who are connected with the story, and it necessarily doesn't have to be like, a daughter or a friend or a
Right.
best friend or something like that. Sometimes it's historians, right? So for John Fox, I was able to talk to his daughter. I was able to talk to a lady who wrote a book about what happened to John Fox. I talked to a historian in Boston who was kind of connected to the story, because John Fox had a connection and lived in Boston for a time and two. And so I just look at those angles. And so once I get those interviews in and have that research, I transcribe all my interviews. And so from there, from the interview, that's when I write my script,
Hmm.
right? So I, transcribe the interviews, like, oh, that's a good piece. I want that in there. And then I write my voiceover. And then it's like, voiceover interview one, voiceover interview two, and then so on and so on and so on.
Right.
And then sometimes what happens is every time I tell a story on Black is America, it's never just about that one person. You're always going to get something from something else. And so if you listen to the one with Alvin Cash, you're going to
Yeah.
hear about Colin Powell. You're going to
Yep.
hear about other people, right? And so from there, I'm like, where's the connection where I can interview, put this in there as well. So I'm going to do that research and write that part of the story, right? So there's like a whole nother story that's not really that's connected to the title story, but is completely different,
Yeah.
because I really try to pack a whole bunch of information in there. So research, write the script, and then from there, once the script is written, I do my voiceover, record that part, and then do the editing. Right, so it's
Hmm.
like, again, it's almost like the script, and like um, voiceover, then interview piece here,
Right.
and then even though they said something at minute 45, I needed at minute 23, so I put it there, and just the beauty of editing. And then once
Oh
that's
yeah.
edited in the DAW, then there's the sound design. The sound design takes about 2 to 3 days, because I'm literally going through different sound effects, different music, making sure that the music fits the tone of that part of the show. For example, with Alvin Cash's episode, I wanted to, he's in the desert in Iraq fighting
Yeah.
this firefight. So it's not going to make sense to have this high up tempo country western music to go with a firefight in the Middle East. So I'm looking for Middle Eastern music that sets the tone of that particular scene in the episode. And then from there, once it's sound design, once I go through like hours and hours and hours of music
Oh
to
yeah.
make sure it makes sense, then we upload it and it's there for people to consume. So, and the
Yeah.
whole process probably takes between 2 and 4 weeks for a 45-minute episode.
And that doesn't shock me though, because and seriously, it doesn't shock me, because when you do listen, and I hope everybody goes and listens to even at least one episode, because you can hear, to me, the quality of the production that you put into telling these
Appreciate that.
stories is really good, man. I mean, it's solid. It's really well done. I mean, kudos to you, for you have way more patience than I would, but I also get it, because the sound design, to me, I mean, on top of the story and the scripting and the way you deliver the narrative, the sound design makes it such a much more immersive experience. Like, it really sucks you into the story. So,
For
and I
sure.
think that's great. And you start, to me, it harkens back to the days of, like, the radio teleplay stuff, like Orson Welles and just all that
Absolutely.
stuff. Before there was TV, it was all radio, and they did all the sound effects and everything right in the studio, because it was part of the storytelling process, right? They wanted your imagination. They had to give you the tools for your imagination to work and take you to the place, so the story would be believable and you would be transfixed and huddled around the radio like, oh my God, what's going to happen next? And they have you tune in next week. And I
Absolutely.
like that. And this is why I know, and I have to know that you have a production background. So, but I love how you've made that, you've taken what you've learned from a production aspect and brought it into this, and you've made that connection. And I think that really, really shows. And I like that. Like, I hear that stuff and I'm like, man, this is like, definitely wants me to take my game up a notch from a creative standpoint. But
Well,
I,
it's funny. It's funny
yeah,
you mentioned that really quickly. I
yeah,
went in and listened to War of the World. You referred to Orson Welles
sure.
and stuff like that. And before I did the first episode of John Fox, the All American Hero, I literally put on Saving Private Ryan,
Mm,
right? And I turned the sound all the way up because if you watch Saving Private Ryan, the first 20 minutes is just like and an all out just hell.
yeah,
It's
it's
just
literally
hell.
shock and awe.
Right, 100%, right? But I turned the sound all the way up and turned my back and then closed my eyes to the movie. So I'm trying to pick up all the different sounds that I'm hearing. So that way I'm making sure that I don't necessarily have because it's a World War II scene. And I
Right,
don't want to have an M1 Garand when I should have something else for World War II, which is more so, in World War One, right? So
right.
I'm trying to make sure I'm having those right sounds. So it's one of those things where it's a labor of love, but definitely people have gravitated towards it and appreciate it. So
Yeah, 100%, man. And I think that too, I think just being able to present these stories in that way, where it is the very storytelling effect with the sound design and all that, I think really makes the story stick with you. I mean, it makes you pay attention, at least for me, because I'm such a, it stimulates all the senses. So I'm like, I am like locked in. And I think that's a great move by your part to put out a product like that, because it does
appreciate
speak
that.
to the quality, but I think it also helps to make you pay attention to the story a little bit closer. And yeah, it makes it different than just like, what we're doing now, like two talking heads going back and forth, answering questions, having a conversation. Nothing wrong with that. I mean,
Not at all.
but I like that it's creators like you who are taking advantage of the medium in the way that it can be and should be, and pushing it to a level and telling these stories with adding in the
Well,
sound effects, the sound
it,
design, and
yeah,
something compelling.
it's a change of pace, right?
Yeah,
And I think as independent podcasters, right, I could easily be like, you know what, I don't have the war chest of a Wondery or Radio Lab
yeah,
or something like that. I can't do that style of show. But I think it's important for me, at least I feel the responsibility as an independent podcaster to push our section of podcasting forward that, like, yes, as an independent
right.
podcaster, you can do this style of show. It does take time, and this is how you can do it, and this is how you can be successful with it. So I do feel a bit of that responsibility
Mhm.
when it comes to being an independent podcaster.
Yeah, and I think you hit the nail on the head with that. I think it's totally true. I mean, listen, if you're going to be out there creating and creating a product for people to, take listen to and learn from, I think the best is to put your best foot forward on that, so that way it is memorable and it's something that, they're learning, but they're entertained as well. I mean, people want to listen to
Oh yeah, for sure.
different podcasts because that's something they're interested in. They're looking for something different to like listen to, stimulate them, get them thinking, like, and there's literally a podcast for every person out there. So,
It's true.
why not take advantage of it in the style that you're doing? So
Absolutely.
I think that's really cool. Um, so want to talk to you a little bit too about, like, I just want to kind of go over the influences type of a thing. Like we
Sure.
were talking about it before, sort of where you started and now where you are, and we touched on a couple quick, like This Is America, the American Life,
Yeah.
and some of those other shows, and we talked about Orson Welles. But when it comes to the style that you're doing, I mean, who else really has been somebody that like you look to and be like, wow, that's something that really motivated me or inspired me to do this style of narrative storytelling.
So, I mean, it's not just limited to the podcasting, right? When it comes to those influences, right? But from a podcasting standpoint, it's like the ones I shared with you before, but it's also honestly ESPN's 30 for 30 is a huge influence, right?
Oh
Those
yeah,
those sports docs and the
so
way
well
that
done.
they're so well done. Not just the ones on TV, but the podcast versions as well. I remember, and then they did one ESPN did one called Pin Kings, where it was this fascinating documentary on ESPN podcast where these two guys grew up together, same on the wrestling team in like Miami.
Mhm.
But like one became law enforcement, the other became a drug pen, and one had to like go in and arrest the other one down in Colombia or something like that, or their team arrested in Colombia. So it's like
Wow.
stuff like that is just like gripping uh, documentaries and podcasts that are just cool. But also, like I said, especially from a sound design standpoint, I'll go and listen to a Hans Zimmer and how he scores Gladiator and how he scores Inception or something like that, or John Williams and how he did Star Wars or whatever, right? Like Duel of the Fates. Right? I remember him having a conversation talking about how, like, he saw the scene for Duel of the Fates, and it was like this, almost like this, like religious experience and ethereal experience when when Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan were fighting Darth Maul, right?
Yeah.
And so that's where he came with the
Yeah. Best part
and
of that whole
so
movie.
right, exactly, right. And so it's like I think a lot of people think sound design is just like, I'm just gonna slap a music bed on there and
Yeah.
this and like, no, there is some serious thought that goes into it. Or how I remember Hans Zimmer was talking about the Dark Knight trilogy and how, like, he was saying that, like, dun, 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 or something like that, and how the that note or that chord was incomplete,
Mhm.
right? And the reason it's incomplete because Batman is not a true hero; he's a vigilante. So I
Right.
can't complete that whole process because he's not a hero, right? And so that whole aspect of that sound design is just crucial, and one thing I gravitate towards. But also, just from a storytelling standpoint, I watch all types of media. Like Shonda Rhimes, who did like Grey's Anatomy and stuff like
Oh
that, is
yeah.
somebody who that she is my shiro here, like 100%, right? But also other people who write, like Christopher Nolan and how he
Oh
does
yeah.
his work. So I'm influenced by a lot. And then like I tell everybody, like the news and stuff like that, I'm influenced by that. I was the kid who had to figure out if I watched Peter Jennings, Tom
Mhm.
Brokaw, or Dan Rather as a kid. I was the kid who watched the news at
Yeah.
5:30.
Me too.
So that was me. So
Yeah.
so I'm influenced by a lot. Influenced by a lot.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, as creators, I mean, that's what it is, right? You're constantly pulling influences from everywhere, from like,
Sure.
things you see outside of nature to a comic book to a picture to an album to, I mean, pretty much everything, right? You get that one
Absolutely.
thing. Like I think about throughout the course of the day, like so many things that I'll see and it like just creates a spark. And I feel like it's so random sometimes, but I'm like, I don't know, for whatever reason, I needed to see that, hear it, smell it, taste it, like for whatever reason. But that was the thing that sort of unlocked like the next idea that I had. It's
Absolutely.
it's amazing how that happens.
I'm actually working on a new mental health podcast that's going to come out next year on May 7th. And a big influence of how I'm going to do it came from watching Ghost Rider from back in the day on
Yeah.
PBS.
Yes.
Right. Right. So
Yeah.
again, like to your point, like you're just always amazed about how things you don't really think about are going to
No.
influence you from time to time.
Yeah. 100%, man. 100%. It's wild how that happens. Absolutely. So I want to. I feel like this is sort of a no brainer question to ask, but
Sure.
I do think that it's important because I feel like it is an art and we talk about it all the time. But I do. I want let's the importance of storytelling, right? The cultural impact it has um in society as a whole. Like I feel like telling, I mean, it's how we've all learned, right? I mean, how the human race really developed as a species is from passing down stories from one generation to the next,
Absolutely.
and obviously where they started and where they end is sometimes but I think that's just how it goes, right? I mean, we've just
Right.
told each other stories for years and years and forever. I think for as long as humans could communicate and or draw on cave walls and all that stuff, like we have been telling and sharing stories, and
Right.
I think it's just within our nature to do that. So I'd love to hear your perspective on, I guess, the importance of storytelling, right? And what makes even a show like yours important.
Storytelling is the emotional investment in the piece, right? Like that's what it invokes. So I do some work with a behavioral health company called Meadows Behavioral Health Care, and so I was, for a time I was doing two shows for them called Beyond Theory and Recovery Replay. So Beyond Theory was more like a clinical style approach, ripped from the headlines approach from about mental health and behavioral health and
Hmm.
and things of that nature. And Recovery Replay was more so about like telling a person's journey of recovery, right?
Mhm.
And I always told people beyond theory is for the head, but recovery replay is for the heart. And I think while you can share that credibility of people of like, sharing like these stats and these facts and these
Yeah.
figures and stuff like that, like if you really want people to engage with that call to action and you really want them to be an advocate, buy something or whatever, the storytelling piece is just critical. It's just crucial. Storytelling dates back to this aspect in the West African tradition of what is called a griot. A griot is a person who passed down stories from time to time, who would tell like these recordings of people in Africa and stuff like that. So it's one of those things where just we keep up with that tradition,
Yeah.
and not just in West African tradition, but in other traditions as well. It's just one of those things where it's important, and so storytelling is just it's just critical, man. It's just critical.
Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think that it's sort of I don't even think it's becoming a lost art. I just think people are learning new ways to tell stories in different ways, especially, as more technology becomes available and whatever it is, even on TikTok. I mean, it's not all just dance videos. I mean, people are telling
Right.
like stories and doing that part 1, part 2, part 3, but they're finding unique ways to tell stories within given mediums of choice, and I always find that like just fascinating to me. Like it's almost like people just find a way to tell a story in their own way, the way they want to do it. Give them the tools, whether it's taking a rock and chiseling it on a wall or using a
Right.
TikTok app. I think people will always find a way.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah,
Like I said, like whether it's putting chiseling into a rock or print media from the
yeah,
old American Revolutionary War days and stuff like that to now to TikTok and podcast and short form clips on social media. Like we're all doing some brand of storytelling, and I think honestly, Chris, by the time you get to like 35 years old, you have at least 1,000 good stories in you. A
oh yeah,
thousand good stories there, and then you're waiting for just people just come out and just hear stories of loss, hope, happiness, joy, and all the things in between. So it's embedded in all of us for sure.
yeah. Great point for sure. Great point. So, what's the legacy of Black is America? What would you like the legacy to be for Black is America? Because I gotta imagine, you probably aren't going to do the show forever, but I don't think you have any stop. I don't think you're stopping with it anytime soon. So what would I guess? Because I mean, the great thing about podcasting is you produce these things and they kind of live on forever. Like
Right,
you just store them and there they are. So I mean, it could be like 15 years from now, 20 years from. I mean, who knows what technology will
right,
be like? But I
right,
mean, Black is those episodes that you're doing now that you have done will probably still be accessible somewhere.
right.
So I would say I would ask you like, what's the legacy that you'd like to leave behind?
It's funny because I actually was going to stop Black as America after season 3, and then an older Black woman told me, "No, you don't. You will not." And I'm like, "Yes, ma'am." I
Okay
tried
then.
to, right? I tried to, but she wouldn't let me.
Nope,
Um,
ain't
but
happening.
I would like to think the legacy of Black as America is it's a couple of things. One, it tells the story that we as African Americans have absolutely helped craft the story of America, and that the story of America without Black America is incomplete. That's
Mhm.
just how I feel, and that's where,
Well, that's facts.
yeah, yeah, right. And so I think that's definitely one piece of the legacy I wanted to tell, but also it goes back to what I was saying earlier that independent podcasters think that like if you don't have all these resources and stuff like that, that you can't do these style of shows or have some type of success. And I'm here to tell you that you absolutely can. And so I think it is there to serve as proof of concept that you can create nonfiction narrative without a huge budget. You're going to have to spend a lot of time. That's what you're going to make up for it. But you don't have to have like a huge budget in order to pull it off. I use all the many elements of stuff in podcasting that many people use.
Mhm.
I use Adobe Audition. I have access to like different type of soundscapes and sound effects or whatever that somewhat
Right.
affordable for the most part. And honestly, you just kind of limited to your creativity. And so I hope that when people listen to Black is America 20, 30 years from now, that they feel that, they feel affirmed. They feel like, Black America has definitely created a lane in America and that we've helped shift the scope of this country. But also at the same time to independent podcasts, like you can absolutely do this work. Because honestly, Black is America was never meant to be what it is now.
Right.
It honestly was just a portfolio piece to show that I can do nonfiction narrative work to kind of sell myself to other, networks and stuff like that. Like, no, we want to hear this.
Yeah.
So there you go. Go figure.
Sorry, you've created a monster for yourself now.
I know, right?
You're
Pretty
stuck.
much.
You're stuck.
Yeah, like I said, like that older Black one,
Yeah.
like, no, you don't. Like, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Nope. You're right. You're right. That's it. So what is so other than opening doors that you never thought you would open, like going on trips and things like that, like
Yeah.
what is something unexpected that you learned through doing this podcast
Um,
or
I,
any
I
podcast? I mean,
so I'll go in a different direction. Like I said, I've done work in behavioral health and doing the same type of style of show and stuff like that. Just a lot about behavioral health and mental health, right? And how deep the stigmas are when it comes
Mhm.
to certain disorders, when it comes to substance abuse and stuff like that, and just understanding that like a lot of people got a lot of stuff going on, man. But
Right.
even with that said, like there's hope and there's ways to I don't want to say come out the other side because anybody in
Mhm.
recovery knows that like it's an ongoing everyday
Right.
endeavor, right? But just understand that like these people's in their story, they have power and that power can help other people get help. I recently did an episode about sex addiction on the episode, and like literally a week after that episode aired, somebody called and got some help, and I was able to hear about that. And so when you hear stories like that, I mean, I know in podcasting we talk often about monetization and growth and this that, and the other, and,
Right.
I'm here for that. I'm not here to block that, and that's something that's important to you, this that, and the other. But when you know you're making an impact and you hear people say, you know what, I listened to this episode, I went and talked to somebody, I went and got some help, I went and did something, like that's profound to me. And so I think what I've learned to ultimately answer your question that like podcasting can be so powerful in helping to save people's lives and helping to impact lives. And those shows have gone on not to be just marketing pieces for the Meadows, but also
Right.
educational resources for clinicians and therapists and stuff like that. And so, again, I'm not a therapist. I don't have some type of
Right.
social work degree or anything. I'm just a dude who tells stories, man. But
Hey.
apparently, those stories are beneficial in a industry that I really didn't have a background in before I started. So it's just the power of podcasting, man.
Yeah, power podcasting, power storytelling. There you go,
Yeah.
man. I love that. I love that. That was beautiful. Thanks for sharing that. All right. So last question here
Yeah.
is if someone wants to listen to Black is America, like
Yeah.
they're gonna. What do you recommend? Which episode is the one they should start with, or maybe which episodes? Like if someone's like Dominic, which episode would be one where I should start with and kind of get me sucked into the world of Black is America podcast? Which one or ones do you recommend they start with?
So I'll go with the episode of Tom Lee. So Tom Lee was an African American riverboat worker who went and saved 32 people from a steamboat that was sinking. Right? He wasn't able to save everybody, but he just so happened to be on the Mississippi River, and was able to save these people.
Hmm.
And not only did he save them, like taking his speedboat, going back and forth to putting people in the boat, take them to the shore, going back, this and the
Right.
other. He also, built a fire to keep them warm because in the mind, in that instant, he knew that hypothermia was going to be an issue. And this is also a personal story because it takes place near my hometown in Memphis, Tennessee,
Hmm.
right? And so I would tell people to listen to Tom Lee for Black is America. Tom Lee, the All American hero. Yeah, that's
I
the
love
one.
that. I love that. I'm gonna have to listen to that one because I haven't even listened to that one yet. So now I'm like, oh man,
Everybody who listens to it said like that's the best one.
yeah,
And that's the one we got the Webby for and all the other stuff. So yeah, that's the one everybody says that's the best one.
I love that. I love that. And by the way, because I did this with my last few guests that I've had on, and I think you'll concur with this, is if you are looking to get into podcasting to make a lot of money, I would say turn back now. Do you agree with that statement?
Listen, 100%, 100%. Yeah, like because like I make a pretty decent living at it, and even still, it's scratching and clawing every day. Like, listen, like, and I'll say this in addition to that, not only you shouldn't expect to make a whole bunch of money. Just know that whatever money you make comes with a responsibility. That check comes with a responsibility because it's not just as simple as just cashing a check and making content. Like there's contracts involved. There's things you can get sued for. There's like if you don't have certain like your mid roll and pre roll ad in a certain place and they say hey you didn't do this and I would agree to you can get sued for that. So just because you make money in podcasts doesn't mean it's all bells and whistles and rainbows and unicorns. Like there's a responsibility that comes with that check. So I'm not saying don't monetize. What I'm saying is understand the responsibility that comes with it.
Yeah, great point. I love that. I love that. It is very good because I don't think podcasters or I'm just gonna say creators overall. I'm not gonna that they understand that when you get into the real business of business, that yes, there's things that have to be done. And as you said, and I like how you said it, there with that check, with that money, there's responsibility. And
Right.
it's time to start adulting.
100%. That's why I'm
Yeah.
saying at the top of the show, like, listen, it can be stressful. Like at first it's like cool, like, yeah, we're making podcasts and this and the other. And I swear sometimes as much as I love it, I swear I wish all thing I'm doing is podcast. Like there's appearances, there's this, there's that, there's other stuff. And so a lot comes with it. A lot comes with that check.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great way to wrap this episode up for anybody that's listened all the way to the end, and I hope you did. So, Dominic, let everybody know right now, and of course, we'll have the links in our notes and all that, but let everybody know where can they check out Black is America?
Absolutely. You can check out Black is America on any platform you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and everything else in between. There's also a website, blackisamericapodcast.com, where you can listen to it as well. And also you can follow me on LinkedIn, Dominic Lawson, as it says on the screen, but also I'm on Instagram at The Real Dominic Lawson.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dominic. I really appreciate you hanging out with us today. Thanks for spending time. Thanks for being so open and transparent. And I hope everybody out there really either you learned something or you got inspired or you're going to go right away and do what I would do, which is go and listen to Black is America podcast. So make sure you follow Dominic wherever you get podcasts and make sure you check out that website as well. And if you're listening to me, if you're listening to Creative Frequencies here, yes, please make sure you hit that follow button. And if you're watching us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button so that way you get notified every single time I drop new episodes of the show. All right, Dominic, thank you so much. Really appreciate you, buddy.
Thank you so much.
And for everybody out there, thank you for watching. And always remember to rock it. Yeah. Hey, thanks for listening to the show. Hope you enjoyed the interview. If you did like what you heard, please do me a quick favor and hit that follow button wherever you are listening to the show. And also, please feel free to follow me on social media by using the links in my show notes. Thank you guys so much, and let's rock.